what I want to do is, if I'm looking at an athlete, I have three categories I can target. So force would mean low velocity, all right, high force. Power would be a good combination of velocity and force. Velocity would be low force, high velocity, right? So if I think let's make it more realistic. Let's say this is like 0 to 10, okay? So it'll give you a good 0 to 10 time. This will give you a good 0 to 20 time. This will give you a good 0 to 40 time, right? So I'm looking at these three categories. So in order to train this quality, what I would do is very heavy. And we just went over velocity decrement. So 60 to 70% is going to target force. So if I work on just the heavy portion of this, my velocity is going to be no change. So my velocity should not change for me working on force. So if I were to do this only, my velocity would not improve. It would just maintain, if not get worse. Okay. For power, what I'm looking at is a lot faster. So I'm looking at a medium load of 40 to 50% velocity decrement. All right. So my velocity would have small change. So it would change a little bit, but it wouldn't change a lot. So I'm kind of even over here. It may not change at all, but my 0 to 20 time is going to get better. I'm going to have some force applications. I'm going to have some velocity capabilities here. So my force would have a small change. Okay, lastly, velocity. I'll look at a light load, 20 to 30% velocity dec. On this one, force would have a very small change. And velocity would have a positive change. Okay? So when I'm looking at how I want to target each athlete, typically over the course of an off season, we might go straight through here. We might start everybody heavy, right? So what we'll do is every athlete that comes in, we start heavy. They're coming off of a little bit of a break, not doing much. What we want to do is get them acclimated back into their acceleration qualities, right? We know from research that acceleration can drop by 10 to 15% plus over the course of a season. Some athletes 20, while velocity might only drop 1 to 3% over the course of the same amount of time. So what we want to do first is return them back to these acceleration qualities and maintain some of our velocity qualities. So our force is going to be our target. NFL offseason, let's say we have an 8-week offseason, we might spend a very even amount of time in each of these categories, starting with the force. So with force, we'll start off week 1, maybe we'll go all the way to week 3 here, working on this quality. Power, might go 4 through 6. Velocity, 7 and 8. So typically what we talked about is the force side of the equation. It's usually, with most of the guys that we test, a little bit lower. So we're going to spend a disproportionate amount of time on the force, gradually into power for a couple weeks, and then velocity will be the lowest amount of time. So if we see something different, like an athlete is very, very, very poor on the force side, or has a high velocity, we might keep him in this phase for another week, right? So now we're in 1 to 4, and then he spends 2 weeks here, okay? Now, the athlete that we talked about that has a super, super, super high force, really good power, and needs to work some of those velocity characteristics, we might switch it up and say, okay, you're going to spend 2 weeks in this category, 2 weeks in this category, and then the rest of the time in the velocity category. And that way we can target it. So no matter what, a lot of people ask me like, well, are you only going to have them do velocity? It's like, no, we're going to take them through the whole spectrum, but spend appropriate times in each spectrum, right? So if I want to target my velocity, I want to spend 30 to 40% of my time in the off season in this category, right? Or if I'm really bad here, I want to spend more time on this side. So that way guys exit the off season. Our goal is power, right? But my power either was derived from my force side of the equation or my velocity side of the equation.